Today is going to be the worst day of your life.
United States, winter of 2019. It was a cold night, typical for the city, but not for those about to experience something that would change everything. A taxi driver left for work, not knowing if he would return home with enough money to save his mother, who was hospitalized in critical condition. Along the way, a hooded American gang crossed his path. What seemed like just another crime on the dark road turned into something none of them expected, because that night they weren't alone. In this video, you'll follow an intense story, told as a true account where choices, fear, and mercy intersect. Nothing happens by chance. Every detail matters, and the ending will make you reflect long after the video is over. If this message is for you, leave an amen in the comments. Welcome to this video about untold stories of Jesus. Before we begin, I invite you to participate. Write in the comments where you are listening from right now and the exact time. Leave a like because it helps this message reach more people who need to hear this story today. Now take a deep breath, because what you are about to see is not just a story. The clock on the dashboard read 10:47 p.m. when the taxi slowed down at the red light. Daniel Moore's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, not from fear, not yet, but from exhaustion. He had been driving for almost 14 hours straight on that cold Saturday, weaving through the streets and avenues of an American city that never slept, but seemed indifferent to the suffering of those struggling to survive within it. In his coat pocket, his cell phone vibrated for the third time in less than 10 minutes. Daniel didn't need to look to know who it was. The hospital. He took a deep breath before answering, keeping his eyes fixed on the traffic light. "Mr. Moore," said the nurse's tired voice, "the doctor asked me to remind you that your mother's antibiotic needs to be purchased today. The hospital's stock has run out." Daniel closed his eyes for a second. I know, he replied in a low voice. "I'm working on it. I'm getting there." He hung up without waiting for a reply. His mother, Evelyn Moore, 67, had been hospitalized for 2 weeks with a severe lung infection. She had no health insurance, no savings, no one but him. The cost of the medication was almost everything he had earned that entire week as a taxi driver. That's why he didn't stop. That's why he accepted any race. That's why he didn't complain about being tired. The light turned green. Daniel accelerated. Minutes later, the app beeped. Ride requested. Pickup point. A remote, poorly lit industrial neighborhood known for frequent gang problems. He hesitated. He would normally refuse, but the price was above average. "Just this one," he murmured to himself. "Just this one more." When he arrived at the location, no one was waiting. Just abandoned warehouses, graffiti on the walls, and the distant sound of a passing train. Daniel felt a strange chill, as if something was wrong. He was about to cancel when 3 figures emerged from the darkness. Hooded, loose-fitting clothes, firm steps. "Damn it," he whispered. Before he could react, another man appeared behind the car, blocking the exit. They were all wearing masks. One of them forcefully hit the hood. "Get out of the car, now." Daniel swallowed hard. His legs felt heavy, but he obeyed. He descended slowly, his hands visible. "Look, if it's money, I work with that. I can transfer everything I have on the app," he said, trying to remain calm. Just don't hurt anyone." One of the men laughed. "Relax, taxi driver. We just want to talk." Another person opened the back door and got into the car without asking permission. "You're going to drive," he said, "and you're going to do exactly what we tell you." Daniel felt his heart pounding in his ear. I can't," he replied, almost pleading. "My mother is in the hospital. I need to buy her medicine today. Please." The man in front tilted his head. "Everyone has a story, buddy." They got into the car. 4 hooded figures. The taxi now seemed too small. The air grew heavy, difficult to breathe. Daniel returned to the driver's seat, his hands sweaty, feeling the cold barrel of something, which he preferred to believe wasn't a gun, pressing against his back. He directs. The car started moving. For the first few minutes, nobody spoke, only the sound of the engine and Daniel's heavy breathing. He thought about his mother, alone in that hospital bed, waiting for medicine that might never arrive. He thought about what would happen if something went wrong there. That's when he noticed something strange. There was someone else in the back seat. He wasn't wearing a mask. He wasn't speaking. He wasn't moving. Daniel didn't remember seeing that man enter. He wore simple, light-colored clothes and had a different presence. His face was serene, his eyes attentive. He looked at the hooded figures with a disconcerting calmness, like someone observing something whose outcome he already knows. Daniel blinked several times, thinking that stress was playing tricks on his mind. "Hey," he whispered, almost inaudibly. "Who are you?" The man simply looked at him and smiled. One of the hooded figures turned abruptly. "Shut up and drive!" Daniel obeyed, but his heart raced even faster. That presence made no sense. It didn't follow the logic of that moment, and yet it was there. The taxi turned onto a more secluded road. Poor lighting. No cars in sight. "Here," said one of the men. "Lean over." Daniel stopped. His hands were trembling uncontrollably now. Bored. He went down. The four surrounded Daniel. One of them began searching his pockets, taking what little money he had there. Another watched the car. "Is that all?" he asked, irritated. "You work all day for peanuts?" It's all I have," Daniel replied, his voice breaking. "It's to buy medicine." The gang leader raised his hand, signaling silence. "And the car?" he asked. "What do you guys think?" Daniel felt his legs give way. Without the taxi, he would lose his job. Without a job, he would lose his mother. That's when he heard a calm voice behind him. "Do you really want to do this?" They all turned around at the same time. The man from the back seat was now outside the car, standing between Daniel and the gang. No one had seen him move. "Who are you, man?" growled one of the hooded figures. The man did not answer immediately. He looked at Daniel, then at each of them, as if weighing something invisible. "There's still time to choose," he said finally. The wind blew strongly at that moment. The lights on the nearest lamppost flickered, and, for the first time since it all began, the hooded figures seemed to hesitate. Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in weeks, hope, but the leader stepped forward. "What to choose?" The man looked up. "What you will be remembered for tonight." And in that second, something changed in the air. The wind picked up again, colder, heavier, as if the road itself had held its breath. Daniel remained motionless, his knees slightly bent, ready to collapse at any moment. His heart pounded so hard he was sure the hooded figures could hear it. The man in light-colored clothes remained there, firm, showing no fear. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't back down. He simply stared at each of them as if he already knew everything they had done and everything they would still do. "Who the hell are you?" the leader repeated, his voice now less confident. The man replied calmly, "Someone who understands the weight of choices." One of the hooded figures laughed nervously. "That guy's crazy." He spat on the ground. "He must be some homeless guy who got in the car without us seeing." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but couldn't. He knew it wasn't true. He knew because no one got into that taxi without him noticing, and above all, because that man didn't seem lost. He seemed all too present. The leader made a gesture with his hand. "That's enough," he pointed at Daniel. "Tie him up. We'll take the car, and that's it." Two of them stepped forward. It was then that the man in light-colored clothes spoke again, now with a slightly firmer voice, not louder, just impossible to ignore. "Before that," he said, "you should hear his story." The hooded figures exchanged glances. "We don't want to hear anyone's story," one of them replied. "Everyone here is just trying to survive." The man tilted his head. "Exactly." He looked directly at Daniel. "Tell me." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had never been good at talking about himself. He had never had time for it. But at that moment, something inside him broke. "My mother," she began, her voice faltering. "She's in the hospital. Lung infection. The hospital doesn't have the medicine. I've been working since early this morning. Since yesterday, actually. To be able to buy it before it's too late." He took a deep breath, fighting back tears. "If I lose this car, I lose everything." The silence fell like a sentence. One of the hooded figures looked away. Another clenched his fists. The leader remained motionless, but his breathing grew heavier. "Everyone has a mother," one of them murmured, almost without realizing it. "Not everyone cares," retorted another, trying to maintain a tough stance. The man in light-colored clothes took a few steps forward. His feet touched the asphalt lightly, as if they carried no weight at all. "Do you remember the last time they called yours?" he asked. No one answered. "Do you remember the last time you heard someone say they were proud of you?" Daniel felt a shiver run through his body. It didn't sound like a provocation. It sounded like the truth. "Shut up!" shouted the leader, pulling something out of his coat. "You're not in charge here." For a moment, Daniel thought it would all end there, but the man did not move. "I know," he replied calmly, "and yet I'm here." The taxi lights flickered on their own. The radio turned on for a second, crackling, before turning off again. One of the hooded figures took a step back. "This is weird, man." man, he whispered. Very weird. It's just a trick, the leader insisted, but his voice betrayed insecurity. The man turned to Daniel. You did what you could, he said. You worked to the limit. You didn't give up, even when no one was watching. Daniel felt tears escaping. I just don't want her to die thinking I failed her. The man placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder, and with that touch, something inexplicable happened. The noise of the road faded away. The cold vanished. Daniel felt a gentle, comforting warmth, like when he was a child and slept on the sofa while his mother stroked his hair. The hooded figures stood motionless, as if time had slowed down just for them. You can still leave, the man said, now looking back at the gang. Leave the car, leave the money, and go. And what if we don't want to? The leader challenged, but his hand trembled. Then you'll carry it, the man replied. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. Silence once again dominated the place. One of the hooded figures slowly removed his mask. He was young, tired eyes, fear disguised as anger. I didn't sign for that, he said. I'm leaving. What? The leader turned around furiously. No, the young man shook his head. Not today. He turned around and started walking away down the dark road. Another hesitated and followed the same path. Two remained. The leader looked around, feeling control slipping through his fingers. For the first time that night, he seemed small. This isn't over, he growled, before slowly backing away. They disappeared into the darkness. Silence returned to being just silence. Daniel fell to his knees, unable to stand. Thank you, he whispered, without knowing exactly who he was thanking. When she looked up, the man in light-colored clothes was already beside the taxi. Go, he said. There's still time. Daniel blinked. And you? The man smiled, the same serene smile from the beginning. I've always been here. Daniel got into the car, and the engine started immediately. When he looked in the rearview mirror, the back seat was empty. The taxi sped off down the road, while Daniel felt that the night was far from over. Daniel drove as if every second had physical weight. His hands still trembled, but now it wasn't just fear. It was urgency. The dashboard read 11:31 p.m. The hospital was 20 minutes away if the traffic lights cooperated. He couldn't remember breathing properly since getting in the car. The back seat remained empty. Even so, Daniel felt that he was not alone. The radio turned on again by itself. An old song, low, almost imperceptible. He tried to turn it off. He couldn't, so he let it play. Somehow it calmed him down. Mom, just hold on a little longer, he murmured, gripping the steering wheel. Images of the road gave way to memories. Evelyn sitting at the kitchen table, counting coins. Evelyn saying everything was fine, even when it wasn't. Evelyn smiling so as not to worry her son. He was driving not only against time, but against the accumulated guilt of years. When he arrived at the hospital, he parked haphazardly and ran through the cold corridors. The smell of disinfectant was strong. The distant sound of machines monitoring lives echoed like a constant warning that everything there was fragile. Daniel, the nurse called when she saw him. The doctor is waiting for you. He continued on, almost tripping over his own feet. The doctor was speaking, but it took a while for his words to make sense. The infection has worsened, he said. The antibiotic is essential. He paused. If we don't start today... Daniel felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. I brought the money, he said, interrupting. It's here. He held out the crumpled banknotes, still cold from the road wind. The doctor nodded. I'll ask the pharmacy to prepare the dose immediately. Daniel sank into the hallway chair, his face in his hands. For the first time that night, he cried without trying to hold back. Minutes later, when he raised his head, he saw something that made his heart stop for a moment. At the end of the hallway, near the window, stood the man in light-colored clothes, sitting, calm, observing. Daniel stood up slowly and walked over to him. You, the voice faltered. How did you get here? The man smiled, looking out the window at the illuminated city. I don't follow the same path as you. Daniel swallowed hard. They're gone, he said, thanks to you. They left because they chose to, the man replied. Even if some only chose to flee. Daniel sat down next to him. That was real, wasn't it? He asked. I didn't imagine it all, did I? The man turned to him. Pain is never imagination, he said, nor is mercy. The door to the room opened. The nurse called Daniel. He entered, his heart in his throat. Evelyn was pale, breathing with difficulty, tubes attached to her frail body. Daniel held her hand. I'm here, Mom, he whispered. I made it. She slowly opened her eyes. I knew it, he murmured, his voice a whisper. God doesn't abandon you. Daniel sent you as lagrimas iscorrering novamente. When the medication started flowing through the IV, something changed. changed, almost imperceptibly. Her breathing became a little less labored. The monitor stabilized. The doctor observed, surprised. "Let's keep an eye on it," he said. "But this is a good sign." Daniel left the room, his chest tight with emotion. He looked down the hallway again. The waiting room bench was empty, but on the chair where the man had been sitting, there was something that hadn't been there before. A small folded note. Daniel caught it. It contained only one handwritten sentence. "Faith doesn't erase the night, but it teaches you how to get through it." Daniel closed his eyes, feeling a shiver run through his entire body. At that very moment, a few kilometers away in an abandoned house, the leader of the American gang ripped off his mask and stared at his own reflection in the broken mirror. His hands trembled. He saw that man's face every time he closed his eyes. "What was that?" he whispered to himself. Outside, sirens echoed in the distance, and for the first time in many years he felt fear, not of the police, but of what he had become. His name was Marcus Hale. Few knew. In the streets, he was simply the leader, the one who didn't hesitate, the one who never backed down, the one who ordered others to do what he himself no longer wanted to feel. Marcus sat on the floor of the abandoned house, his back against the peeling wall, staring at his own hands. They were still trembling. Not from anger, not from withdrawal, but from something he hadn't felt since childhood. Blame. He closed his eyes, and she saw that man's gaze again on the road. There was no hatred. There was no fear. There was knowledge. "No," Marcus murmured. "That's not possible." But the more I tried to push the memory away, the more it came back. The voice, the calm, the phrase, "What you will be remembered for tonight." Marcus stood up abruptly and punched the wall. The physical pain helped silence what was coming from within, or it used to. This time it didn't work. He crossed the room and opened an old drawer. Inside, among dirty money and forged documents, was something he had never thrown away. An old photograph, folded at the corners. A thin boy of about 10 years old with a shy smile sat on a hospital bed. Beside him, a frail but smiling woman held his hand. "Your mother." Marcus felt his chest tighten. She had also been hospitalized in that same hospital years ago. Same ward, same lack of money, same despair. He remembered the night he ran out into the street trying to get help. He remembered asking, begging, and being ignored. That night she died. "I promised," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I promised I would never be weak again." The phone vibrated on the table. Marcus answered it irritably. What it was. "Boss," said the voice on the other end. "2 guys escaped, and the police are patrolling the area. Things are heating up." Marcus closed his eyes. "I'll be gone for a few days," he replied. "I'll let you know when it's safe." He hung up and stood there staring at the wall. On the other side of town, Daniel remained seated in the hospital corridor, holding his cup of cold coffee. It was past 1 in the morning. His body ached, but he didn't want to leave. Not yet. The nurse walked by and smiled slightly. "Her mother responded well to the first dose," he said. "It's still early, but there's hope." Daniel nodded, unable to speak. He walked to the hospital chapel, a small space, almost always empty. He sat down on the last pew. "I don't know how to thank you," she murmured to the silence. "I don't even know if I deserve it." "Gratitude is not currency," a calm voice replied. Daniel turned around in a flash. The man in light-colored clothes was sitting a few rows ahead. Daniel felt his heart race. "You're back." "I never left." Daniel took a deep breath. "They could have killed me," he said. "They could have taken everything." "They could have," the man agreed. "But they didn't. Because of you." The man stood up and walked over to him. "Because of them," he corrected. "Each person chooses who they listen to when silence speaks." Daniel lowered his head. "And now?" he asked. "What happens now?" The man looked towards the hospital, as if he could see beyond the walls. "Now," he said, "the seeds have been planted. Some will die. Others will grow where no one expects them." Daniel looked up. "And you?" he asked again. "Are you going to keep showing up?" The man smiled, with a mixture of tenderness and sadness. "Whenever someone is on the verge of giving up," he replied, "I'll be closer than you think." And then, as before, he simply wasn't there anymore. That same morning, Marcus Hale got into his car and drove aimlessly for hours. He eventually stopped in the hospital parking lot. He couldn't explain why. He sat there, staring at the illuminated building, the same building where his mother had died, the same building where, that night, a taxi driver had fought to save his own mother. Marcus felt his eyes welling up with tears. "What do you want from me?" she whispered to the void. Across the street, under the dim light of a lamppost, a man in light-colored clothes watched silently, and Marcus, without knowing how, sensed that he was being watched. Marcus Hale remained inside the car for a time he himself couldn't measure. The engine was off. His hands rested on the steering wheel. The hospital in front front of him seemed the same as always, cold, impersonal, and yet completely different. It was there that everything had begun, and perhaps it was there that something would end. He got out of the car slowly. Each step seemed heavier than the last, as if the ground were pulling him back. There was no plan, there were no orders, just a restlessness that wouldn't let him breathe properly. Marcus entered through the main door. The smell of the hospital hit him hard, bringing back memories he had tried to bury for years. The endless waiting, the sound of the monitors, the feeling of helplessness. He clenched his fists, trying to maintain control. At the counter, a nurse observed him suspiciously. "Can I help you?" Marcus swallowed hard. The words were hard to come out. "I'm looking for someone." "Name?" He hesitated. "A lady, Evelyn Moore." The nurse typed something into the computer. "Room 312, he replied. "But visiting hours are over." "I know," he said quickly. "I'm not going in. I just need to know if she's alive." The nurse stared at him for a few seconds, assessing the large man with his rigid posture and eyes that looked too tired for someone his age. "She's stable," he finally replied. "Her son has been with her since early this morning." Marcus nodded. A lump formed in his throat. "Thanks." He moved away and sat on a bench in the hallway, a few meters from the indicated room. From where he was, he could see the door ajar. He saw Daniel inside, sitting beside the bed, holding his mother's hand carefully, as if it were made of glass. Marcus felt something break inside him. That could have been him, years ago, if someone had stopped, if someone had helped. He lowered his head, taking a deep breath. "It's no use now," he muttered to himself. "It's still worth it." The voice came from nearby. Marcus looked up abruptly. The man in light-colored clothes was sitting next to him. "You," Marcus felt his stomach churn. "You followed me." "I waited for you," the man replied calmly. "Why?" Marcus retorted, trying to maintain a firm posture. "To judge me?" The man watched him for a long moment. "You've already judged yourself more highly than anyone else could." Marcus laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "If you knew who I really am, you wouldn't say that." "I know exactly who you are," the man replied, "and who you can still become." Marcus looked away, staring at the ground. "My mother died here," she said almost in a whisper, "alone, because I couldn't get the money in time. And that's why you decided the world should feel the same pain," the man said without accusation, just stating a fact. Marcus closed his eyes tightly. "I didn't want to become this," he confessed, "but after a while it was all I knew how to be." The man stood up. "Look again," he said, pointing with his chin toward the room. Marcus looked. Daniel was now speaking softly to his mother, smiling through his tears, a tired but genuine smile. "That story is still being written," the man continued. "His and yours." Marcus took a deep breath. "And what do you want me to do?" he asked. "Apologize? That doesn't change anything." "No," the man replied, "but you change." The silence stretched on for a long time. Marcus reached into his coat pocket and felt something there. He pulled out a crumpled envelope. Inside, there was money, much more than Daniel needed for the medicine. "I was going to use this for something else," Marcus said. "Something that would hurt more people." He slammed the envelope shut. Maybe not today. He stood up, walked to the door of room 312, and knocked lightly. Daniel turned around, surprised to see the unknown man there. "Try?" Marcus felt his heart race like it hadn't since he was a boy. He took a deep breath. "They said the hospital didn't have the medicine, that you had to go looking for it yourself." Daniel frowned, suspicious. "Who are you?" Marcus handed over the envelope. "Someone who took too long to do the right thing." Daniel didn't get it right away. "I can't accept that," he said. "I don't even know you." Marcus nodded. "Don't accept it for me," he replied. "Accept it for her." Daniel looked at his mother, then at the envelope. His hands were trembling. Before he could answer, Marcus took a step back. "I'm not going to stay," he said. "Just use this." And he walked away down the hallway without looking back. Daniel remained standing, stunned. When she finally looked at the bench where the man in light-colored clothes had been sitting, it was empty. But in the air, Daniel felt that tranquil presence again, that silent certainty that something impossible had just happened, and the end was still drawing near. Daniel stood motionless in the hallway for a few seconds, the envelope still warm in his hands. The weight wasn't just of the money, it was of the gesture, of what it meant. He took a deep breath, went into the room, and closed the door carefully. "Mom," she said, sitting down beside the bed, "we'll be able to stay here as long as we need to." Evelyn opened her eyes, weak but alert. "I heard voices," he murmured. "I don't know if I dreamed it." Daniel smiled, his eyes welling up with tears. "Sometimes dreams help us get through this." He tucked the envelope into his backpack, as if protecting it would also mean protecting the newborn hope. When he left the room to inform the staff about the possibility of paying for more doses and tests, he noticed the atmosphere in the hospital hospital change, whispers, hurried footsteps, a security guard speaking softly into his radio. "Did something happen?" Daniel asked the nurse at the counter. She took a deep breath. "A man tried to turn himself in at reception," he said. "He came with information about a group that has been committing robberies in the area. He's very shaken." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. In the security room, Marcus Hale sat with his shoulders slumped. His usual rigid posture had given way to something almost fragile. He had left his car outside, doors unlocked, documents on the passenger seat, as if to prove he wouldn't flee. "I know names, times, places," he told the officer. "I know who else is going to get hurt if you don't act fast." "Why now?" asked the policeman suspiciously. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. "Because today I saw someone save their own mother," he replied, "and I remembered mine." The police officer said nothing, only took notes. The silence there was not accusatory, it was heavy with possibilities. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Daniel sat down again. The radio in the taxi parked outside turned on by itself for a second. He didn't hear music this time. He heard calm, the same as before, the same invisible presence that demanded no proof. Hours passed. The sky gradually cleared. At 5:40 in the morning, the doctor emerged from Evelyn's room with a restrained smile. "The response to the antibiotic was better than expected," he said. "I can't promise miracles, but I can promise she got through the night." Daniel leaned against the wall, feeling his legs give way. He wept, not from despair, but from relief. On the other side of the hospital, sirens approached. Police cars, movement. The names Marcus had given began to make sense. Addresses, weapons seized, 2 men arrested before dawn. Marcus watched everything from a distance, sitting on the same bench where he had been hours before. An agent approached. "You'll need to come with us," he said. Marcus nodded. "I know." Before getting up, she looked down the hallway. She saw Daniel leave the room, speak to a nurse, and thank her. She saw an ordinary man, tired but standing. Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace at a cost. Not the kind that absolves, but the kind that points the way. "Hey," he called softly. Daniel turned around. Their eyes met for a second. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't ask for anything. He just made a minimal gesture with his head, as if to say, "Continue." Daniel reciprocated with the same gesture. As Marcus was led outside, he passed through the glass door. In the reflection, for a moment, he saw neither handcuffs nor an escort. He saw a man in light-colored clothes beside him, walking in the same direction. He blinked. The image was no longer there. The day was dawning, and with it, the consequences. The sun had already risen when Daniel left the hospital for the first time in almost 24 hours. His body ached. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but there was something different in the air, a lightness he couldn't explain. He stopped beside the taxi. He ran his hand along the hood, as if thanking an old comrade in arms. He opened the door, sat in the driver's seat, and remained there for a few seconds, in silence. Nothing in the back seat. Still, Daniel took a deep breath before starting the car, as if expecting to hear a voice. "Thank you," he murmured, without knowing exactly who he was thanking. The cell phone vibrated. A message from the hospital. "Your mother is awake. She asked to see you." Daniel turned off the car immediately and ran back. In room 312, Evelyn was more flushed. Weak, yes, but conscious. When she saw her son, she smiled with effort. "I had a strange dream," she said. "A man sat beside my bed. He said you weren't alone." Daniel felt his heart stop for a moment. "What was he like, Mom?" She closed her eyes, trying to remember. "Calm down," he replied, like someone who has already conquered the night. Daniel held her hand tightly. On the other side of town, Marcus Hale sat in a cold room, awaiting the outcome of something he knew he couldn't prevent. The detective entered with a thick briefcase in his hands. "Your information prevented 3 attacks," he said. "People you know have been arrested. Others will face charges for serious crimes." Marcus nodded. "I know. You will also be held accountable," the officer continued. "But what you did today will weigh heavily against you." Marcus took a deep breath. "I didn't do it expecting forgiveness. Then why?" Marcus thought about the dark road, about the taxi driver, about the hospital, about the gaze of that man who didn't judge but saw. "Because someone gave me one last chance to choose," he replied. Hours later, as he was led out of the room, Marcus walked down a narrow corridor. The walls were white, silent. For a brief moment, he felt a familiar warmth beside him. "That doesn't erase everything," said the calm voice. Marcus wasn't scared. "I know, but what comes next changes." Marcus nodded, his eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you," he whispered. There was no response, but there was peace. Days later, Daniel went back to work, not because everything was resolved, but because now there was time. The medication transformation was working. Evelyn was recovering slowly. There would still be bills, long nights, challenges, but there was hope. On a quiet morning, Daniel stopped at a red light. He looked in his rearview mirror. For a second, just one, he was sure he saw someone in the back seat, not like before, not physically, like a presence that didn't need to be seen in order to exist. The light turned green. Daniel went ahead. In that city, nobody knew exactly what happened on that dark road. There were no headlines. There were no viral videos. There was no proof, just choices. A son who didn't give up, a mother who persevered, a man who decided to stop, and Jesus who didn't need to be announced to be present. Because sometimes the most shocking ending isn't the sound of the miracle, it's the silence of the transformation.